Frank. Thank you. Hi, everyone, and thank you to Frank for having me here today. So my name's Lindsay Jordon. Yeah, I work at the University of the Arts London as a senior lecturer. And I'd like to share some thoughts with you today that I think have some implications for how we design learning experiences, how we respond to the needs of distance learners in this era that we're in, which is supposedly the post-MOOC era. So the question on your lips, of course, is, Lindsay, why so blue? OK, I'll tell you why I'm so blue. I like to keep my finger in the learning pie, as it were. And I finished my master's at the beginning of the year, and I wanted to take part in an online course, see if I could stick with it. So I chose this one, Understanding Cheating in Online Courses. And it's, I hear some chuckles already, yeah, it's a funny old course to do. But it's actually a serious course. It's about academic dishonesty. It's how we design out academic dishonesty in our courses. It's run by this chap called Bernard Bull. Some of you may have heard of Bernard. He recently, well, he just this week started another MOOC called, I think it was Beyond Letter Grades. So, yeah, and it seemed to be a good course. It had a good selection of kind of different kinds of learning activities in it. So I attended, well, I watched the introductory videos for every week, which introduce the topic. Is that working? Yes. And we were given readings, things to watch on YouTube, maybe academic readings to do, which is great. I was kind of missing having homework to do, so that was really nice. Quite enjoyed that, because I'm a bit weird. Having some trouble with the clicker. There we go. Yes, and doing the assignments. So the assignments were mainly on, well, the assignments were all on discussion forums. So, reading something, then writing about it, that kind of thing. And there were some live sessions as well, so I popped into maybe one of those every week. There was about 2 or 3 to choose from various times. And I did my usual thing of kind of starting to be a little bit obnoxious and kind of correcting people in the forums, because I don't like it when people say stuff that's wrong. So, I've probably got some people's backs up. I got my badges, and I started putting them in my backpack. Okay, and then around kind of week 5 of the 8-week course, I stopped, and I dropped out, and it made me feel pretty sad. I really, really wanted to finish this course. Look, that's what I said in my pre-course questionnaire. What do you want to do with this course? I want to finish it. That's all I want to do. So I was desperate to finish this course, and I didn't. And I'm not alone. Lots of distance learners don't finish their courses, and researchers have been looking into this for years and years, for decades. Originally with the traditional correspondence courses, and more recently with the online courses. And so this was a piece of research that was done in 1990, where they asked distance learners who dropped out of their courses, why did you drop out? And these were the kind of reasons they gave. Family life. I got pregnant. I moved house. I moved jobs. Just the general stress of life got too much, got in the way, okay? And these kind of make sense, because the kind of people who are distance learners are the kind of people who've grown up, and they're actually, engaged in, the real world, and they've got other responsibilities that they're competing for their time. And then a few years later, another piece of research decided to look more deeply into this, and rather than just accepting these responses, this got in the way, that got in the way. They said, OK, given that life happens, what would have helped you to remain on this course? OK, and the interesting things that they found was that while students do initially tend to blame themselves or their lives or their situations for not completing these courses, what was really happening is that they were feeling isolated. And what they really needed was things like reassurance. They needed support. And they needed company. This later piece of research actually decided to try and characterize the successful distance learner. So it forgot about the dropouts, and it focused on the few people who completed these courses. And this is what it found. They found they were highly motivated. They were able to be independent, active learners. They were organized. Not only did they know how to manage their time, because it's not rocket science, but they actually prioritized the management of their time. They actually bothered to manage their time. They were very self-disciplined, and they were adaptable to new ways of learning and new environments. Now, when I read this list, it makes me think of that scene in Pride and Prejudice where Darcy is listing all the characteristics of an accomplished woman. And Elizabeth says, my God, how do you know any of these women? They sound remarkable. And, she's right. This is a pretty remarkable list. Not many people are like this. These are exceptional people. But, people learn stuff on the internet all the time. There are things that you can learn on the internet. Here's one thing. This was a film that was released about this time last year. Anyone seen it? Not many, mainly women. It's a great film. It's a great film. You should see it. My boyfriend loves it. Okay, so there's a scene in this film where the lead character, Anna Kendrick, does this really cute thing with a cup, okay? It goes like this. Right, I'm going to really mess this up. I got my ticket for the long way round. 2 bottles of whiskey for the way. And I sure would like some sweet company. And I know you're gonna miss me, what'd you say? Okay? Like that. Wait. Okay, so that was pretty cute. And a lot of girls, teenage girls watching that thought, I want to do that. Which is exactly what they did. My clicker's not working again. There we go. So, there was this big craze. It was this huge learning craze. It all went viral. Girls were kind of, they were doing it in their living rooms and videoing themselves. And then, Anna Kendrick got on the Letterman show, and she was kind of doing it on there, And then, interesting, girls started recording tutorials teaching other people how to do it, okay, and putting that out on YouTube, and they went viral. And then 7-year-olds started doing it, and 4-year-olds started. So you're not so impressed now, are you? I can tell. So everyone was doing it. The internet is fantastic for these kind of short, bite-sized chunks of learning. It takes about 40 minutes to learn how to do that, okay? Short, bite-sized, point-of-need learning, okay? So what about when we think, bite-sized, there we go. So what about more sustained forms of education, something that takes a lot longer? Now, here's something that I didn't learn online, okay? Hope I don't mess this one up either. Hands are a bit shaky. So I didn't learn that online. I couldn't possibly learn it online. It takes a hell of a lot of discipline and a lot of planning to learn something that takes a long period of time. And this wasn't my discipline, and it wasn't my planning, okay? I was driven to my piano lessons by my parents, who paid for them every Saturday morning. There weren't any sleepovers on a Friday night, because Lindsay always has her piano lesson on a Saturday morning at 9:30. Okay, I was made to practice for half an hour a night. Not my choice, And the motivation, I guess, I did want to learn to play the piano in the grand scheme of things, but when it came to the micro decisions about did I want to do my piano practice that night, no, I wasn't really very motivated at all. It was mainly about parental expectation, this idea of this huge amount of money that was being invested into teaching us 3 kids how to play the piano, which my dad reckons comes to about £30,000. Eek, I felt a bit bad when you told me that. I think I should be better. So obviously this kind of all comes into play when you're doing some kind of sustained course of study, some sustained course of education, learning something quite complex. And it's very, very difficult when you're actually, in your own environment, in your natural habitat, and you're surrounded by life's distractions. And it's not so difficult when you're learning face-to-face. And it's not just me that thinks that. There we go. Pro Vice Chancellor of Education at Oxford also thinks it as well. There's some loss when you're not in a person-to-person environment. So what I wanted to look at what was, what does it mean, face-to-face? What does it offer? What is special about face-to-face? And how can we bring that kind of stuff back into online and blended learning design? So these are the kind of things I came up with. When you have face-to-face learning events, there is space for the purely social, the frivolous, the banal. You can talk to each other, not about kind of work or study. You can get to know each other. And you can build the kind of relationships with, people who will support you when your motivation wanes, and they'll carry you through. And interestingly, Chickering and Gamson, when they did their principles of good practice in undergraduate education, they talked a lot about time on task. Now, this is undergraduate education. They get a lot of time off task in undergraduate education. We're talking about distance learning. We need to bring in the time off task because so many online courses are designed without that in mind. You know, it's no good just having a social forum that people can go to if they want to, because that's not going to happen. You need to have it as the default. Now, we alluded to this before about different spaces kind of being set up now for to encourage this kind of collaboration, this kind of social interaction. This is the Crick Institute, which is by St Pancras. I'd love to get rid of that, but I can't with my clicker. There we go. Thank you very much. And can you move the play along to about halfway through? Is that possible? No, not on the Prezi. There we go, on the actual video. I just want to look inside it. I just want to look inside it. I'm like a psychologist. Well, okay, that's near enough. So the Crick Institute is based around this idea of this kind of big central cafe that seats about 1,000 people. And all the labs, it's all kind of scientific stuff. So it's a collaboration between cancer research, a couple of other large kind of research organizations, some universities. And all the internal walls are made of glass, so people can see what people are doing. You know, no one's shut away, and it's all based around this huge social space. It's scarily similar to our new site at King's Cross, our Central St Martin's site, which is built along the same kind of lines around this huge central space. To be honest, it's a bit of a nightmare to teach them because of the noise levels, and you know, it does create some problems. But you can see where they're going with this, about actually trying to architect in this kind of social collaboration. And similarly, Google Campus, the building just off Old Street in London, it's based around these kind of social spaces. It's a bit like a kind of cheap but funky public library, you know, and it's for startups to go and just kind of sit round a table with their laptops and kind of work together and socialize at the same time. So another thing about face-to-face is it's very difficult to ignore people. I think, you know, you're thrown together with a lot of different people, and when you're in a face-to-face learning situation, especially if you've got a good teacher who will mix you up and force you to work with different people, you know, you can't just kind of not talk to the person who, you know, maybe doesn't speak very good English, or the guy you don't think looks like you don't have much in common with. You know, you're kind of thrown together, and you kind of have to carry on those conversations. You can't, someone just can't say something and you just decide to walk away. But when you're in an online forum, it's much more acceptable to do that. It's much more acceptable actually just not to respond, or you know, you actually choose, you know, who to reply to. And that, I think, cuts down on the amount of serendipitous kind of commonalities that you can find with people, and it means it has a different flavour to the conversations that take place. So we've already touched on this idea of reduced flexibility. You know, this very rigid way that I was taught to learn the piano, and it was, you know, there wasn't any flexibility, any choice in that. And flexibility is often talked about as if it's a purely good thing, and I'd like to propose that maybe it's not. Okay, if you give people too much flexibility about when and where they do stuff, you're not actually helping them to do that thing. You're making it easy for them to put it off. Okay? And maybe this kind of giving people less flexibility and less choice will actually help them to focus. And they won't have to do all this kind of stuff like turning off their email and you know, turning off their Twitter and actually, you know, trying to focus stuff and managing their space and all this kind of thing. You know, we actually have to get anything done, sometimes we have to really kind of shut off from the world and stop kidding ourselves that we're really, really capable of multitasking and doing the same quality of work than we would do if we were just focusing on one thing. You might argue with me about that. Now, so this kind of email might be familiar to you. I used to get this kind of stuff all the time before I started insisting that people phone me instead. It's very difficult to actually resolve problems, especially technical problems, by email. And when you're working with online learners, especially people who haven't, you know, learned online before, or, you know, you're getting them to use tools that they're not familiar with, there's often a lot of confusion there. And not only are they actually not able to communicate what is wrong effectively in a way that you will understand, a lot of this is actually people communicating their confusion by writing a load of gobbledygook, okay? And, you know, it's good to be kind of sensitive to that and understand that. And Now I insist that, people phone me as a first point of call, especially if they've got some kind of technical query. Another thing about online communication is, I think, not just email, but all forms of online communication, it doesn't necessarily bring out the best in people. I think when the more detached you are from a person, the less present they are, it's much easier to be a bit rubbish. Do you see what I'm saying? And I think sometimes it's funny because I think people kind of labor under the illusion that by communicating online, they can present themselves the way they want to. They can take time, they can phrase what they say really carefully. But I think we all know, at least one person who, on Twitter or on their blog, comes across as maybe a bit of a prat, but they're actually kind of quite nice face to face, So maybe this is all an illusion. And this is a fantastic book by Shelley Turkle. You might have heard of it because there was a really catchy little video, short animated video that Shimmy Cohen did of it. But this book by Shelley Turkle talks about these illusions and these fantasies that we're kind of almost subscribing to when we're using things like social media. So, another element of the face-to-face is, of course, and these are kind of lots of little kind of nebulous ideas all wrapped up in one, and it's the idea of the event. Like the here and now, something that you've got to actually travel to. It's what gets you actually excited about something. It's the whole synchronicity of something. The fact that it's only going to happen once. It's unique. Never again, and you're going to see a girl dressed up in blue spandex at a conference, okay? You're going to remember this. And when I talk about aesthetics, I don't just mean visual aesthetics. I mean the senses. I mean lots of different senses, so not just the visual, okay, which you get when you're communicating through a computer, or maybe audio as well. Sights, smells, sounds, tastes. You're coming together, you're eating together, you're drinking together. That adds something special in this sense of the event. And that's Dave White up there, because I got that word from him. Hi, Dave. I bet you didn't expect to be here today. I mentioned before about this whole idea of kind of this bit of extrinsic motivation that maybe keeps you going when your intrinsic motivation wanes, and this idea of you having sacrificed something or committed something in order to take this course. So how do we bring this kind of stuff back? Very briefly, the idea of commitment, Harvard have stopped talking about MOOCs, they started talking about SPOCs. All right, and this is a SPOC that they're bringing out on American national security in the press. And in order to gain access to this, you have to do an assignment. You have to do a written assignment, which is interesting because it's bringing in this idea of actually some kind of a commitment that you have to do in order to gain access to the course. Now, I wouldn't do it like this. I'd probably get them to actually, rather than testing how much they actually know about this or how much they're able to paste from Wikipedia about it, I'd probably want to see their ability to respond to a learning activity. So I would maybe use the carrot of accessing the course to get them to do a collaborative learning activity, to get them actually talking to each other, get them actually getting to know each other, and use that as the benchmark for getting onto the course. Take note, Harvard. I'm sure they thought about that. I'm sure there's a reason why they didn't do that. This is an example of kind of the use of the event, and this was one of Dave White's projects. This is Marcus de Sautoy. He's a mathematician, and what they did was they had this one-off event. It was an hour long. It's called Pi Day, where they got together with a load of, in partnership with a load of schools, and developed this, collaborative, crowdsourced pi. They didn't get too close to it, but there we go. It was fun. It was an event. And so here's a couple of examples from the University Arts. This is from Fashioning the Future, which is a summer school. And Nina Stevenson, the lady who runs this course, it's a 3-week course in London, but for the week leading up to it, she got her students to go out into the world and do actual, into the physical world and actually do interventions into their spaces where they worked, because it was about urban growth, social cohesion. So, making little art projects out of litter or decorating bins with flowers. There was someone who, usually instead of just going into his local bagel shop and buying a bagel, he actually asked them to show him how the bagels were made, and he had a really interesting conversation with them. And then what they did was they wrote on their blog to share with the other students about, what had happened, what was the implications of that. Which is quite interesting. And I used that myself on my own course, where I get people to actually go out and have a conversation about the learning and teaching theories that they're learning about, and then report on that, rather than just writing on their blog about it. Haven't got much time left, I'm nearly out, right, 30 more seconds. So this is another example where a chap actually kind of wrote a song about some narrative environment things that he was doing, and got his students to actually come along in the pub and learn the song and perform it. And then after that, he created this open educational resource that allowed other teachers and other students to get their students going out and creating these songs and running these kind of events. And those are two quite nice examples of how you can actually bring the sense of an event and the sense of the face-to-face back into something that would otherwise just be an online learning resource. There's the song. So, in a nutshell, when you're designing online blended learning experiences, privilege the social, emphasize time off task, get people talking to people they wouldn't normally talk to, get a sense of the event, maybe invoke a sense of commitment or sacrifice, and remember that flexibility isn't always a good thing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well done, Bob. Thanks very much, Lindsay.